Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk with Tom. My name is Tom, and I'm your host, Tom. In case you couldn't put all that together, I just explained it to you. Sometimes you just gotta explain everything to the audience, kind of like that one Netflix show that just came out that everyone was like, oh, it's gonna be fat shaming, but then it ended up having a whole slew of other problems, but I'm not here to talk about that. However, a true piece of art doesn't need to have someone explain it. Kind of goes to show how much this show is art. Is online discussion media art? Probably. At least like performance art. If you've ever taken a basic writing class or English class, you've probably heard the phrase show don't tell in terms of writing. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, it basically means instead of explaining everything to your audience, just show them what they need to know. And if you look at the film Kubo and the Two Strings, it took that saying to heart. The first line of dialogue in this film is,
"If you must blink, do it now."
And it's not only referring to the motif of sight, which is very present in this film because all sorts of stuff happens with eyes and being blind and all sorts of... There's a lot of eye stuff going on. But it also acts as a command and an idea of how they're going to tell the story to you because there's a lot of visual storytelling in Kubo and the Two Strings.
Pay careful attention to everything you see and hear, no matter how unusual it may seem. If you fidget, if you look away, if you forget any part of what I tell you, then our hero will surely perish.
So it's basically the film itself saying, don't just zone out and wait for us to explain things, pay attention and the information will be there. Now first off, before I start, I just want to get my one problem out of the way. I like doing my problems at the beginning of the video, that way the rest of the video can just be like, hey, look at all this stuff you did good. But my one problem is the fact that there are some twists in this movie, and they're pretty predictable. Like, if you pay attention, like the movie asks you to, the movie asks that you pay attention, then you're gonna realize, oh crap, this is... But basically the big reveals of this movie were kind of obvious. Especially when other movies have done kind of similar twists recently. I ain't gonna say which ones, because if you're watching this and you haven't seen it, this is gonna be spoiler free. I'm gonna match to make this spoiler free. And yeah, it's predictable, but it doesn't ruin the whole movie, because this is a really good movie. It's a really great movie. One of the first things that I really like is the lore and the characters of this film. The story starts before the movie and goes beyond the runtime of the movie, which goes to show just how well this world has been thought out and just how well these characters have been thought out. So to give you an idea of like the basic lore, basically things that happen before the main story of the film, a little bit of it is shown but not a whole lot. Most of it is retold throughout the story. Basically, Kubo's mother, Sariatsu, which I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, she's some sort of like god or spirit or something like that. It's never exactly explained, but she has magical powers that Kubo also has because he's half of whatever she is. So Kubo can manipulate objects like paper, twigs, leaves, I think basically anything that comes from a tree, even though, again, they never say that, with the help of his shamisen, which a shamisen is a free-strings Japanese instrument, and the lore of it, excuse me, because I have to look at my screen, because I don't want to get anything wrong, because I realized, oh, this is actually kind of ties into the whole story. The shamisen is basically a free-stringed banjo lute type instrument, and it was developed in the Okinawa Islands as an evolution of the free-string Chinese lute, and in the 16th century, blind Japanese storytellers and musicians would use the shamisen as accompaniment for their narratives and songs. The instrument is also used in Japanese folk music and many other genres, and I think it's worth mentioning this history because if you see how Kubo uses the shamisen in the movie, it kind of goes along with that because he has one eye, which I'll get to that in a second as to why, but he also goes into a nearby village every day and uses his shamisen to tell stories. So it actually goes into the lore and basically the history of the instrument itself because he is half blind, and blind storytellers were the ones who basically revolutionized the use of the instrument. And also that combined with the fact that sight and vision is a very big theme in the movie, so it all kind of ties in. And the fact that they chose a shamisen as his instrument of choice is actually very important. Now, Kubo's mother has very similar powers to him, except they're more portrayed as like general magical powers that she seems to be able to use with or without the shamisen. The backstory is that Kubo's mother fell in love with a samurai named Hanzo, who she was sent to kill by her father, the Moon King. And obviously, instead of killing Hanzo, Sariachi fell in love, and then when the Moon King discovered the fact that they were in a relationship together, he was not happy. Sariachi's father and her sisters reacted very much not in the best way, and that being that they tried to kill everyone, and the Moon King stole Kubo's eye as a baby. And at that time, Hanzo's fate was unknown, and I now know what his fate was based on watching the movie, but I'm not going to say it because spoilers is actually a very big spoiler, so I'm not going to say it. So the opening scene of the movie is basically showing Sariachi fleeing her father with her son in her arms, basically on a small boat in the ocean, and they're just giant tidal waves coming to try and take her down, trying to drown her, trying to do whatever. And obviously the Moon King can probably manipulate waves. That's probably what's going on here. That's what I gathered. And she's using her magic. She's using the shamisen to part the waves like Moses, trying to get her and her son to safety. And as they get close to land, a huge wave comes and she doesn't have time to part it, and it comes crashing down and it sends her face first into the rocks along the shore, and then her and Kubo wash up on shore. However, the fact that she hit face first into the rocks, it's important moving forward. For one, she has this nasty scar. I believe I also noticed that she had some discoloration in her eye, which can usually happen from blunt force trauma. Kind of like what happened with David Bowie. Do y'all know that story? How David Bowie got into an argument with his friend over a girl and then he punched him in the eye, and that's why one of his eyes is a different color. But that seemed to happen, but also more importantly, it seemed like she had some sort of CTE or brain trauma that affects how she basically interacts with the rest of her world. Because when it fast forwards into modern day, it shows Kubo basically taking care of her. And when she is cognizant enough to tell Kubo stories, she's very in and out. There's very clearly some sort of brain trauma going on there. And as a result, Kubo's relationship with his mother is very limited, where he feels like he knows his mother, but it's not really his mother in a sense. Sometimes she's there, sometimes the person he recognizes is there, but other times she's just kind of out of it. But like I mentioned before, Kubo spends a lot of his time in a nearby village, while him and his mother live in a cave off along the shore, away from the village. The only thing is, Kubo's mother is very strictly you cannot be out past sundown, because if you are, then your grandfather and your aunts will find you, and they're gonna try and take away your other eye. And he's like, I don't want that, so I'm gonna come home before sundown every night. And this is also kind of a theme where he tells the story of his father, and it's basically a story that his mother told him. And he tells the story of how Hanzo needed to collect 3 different items in order to defeat the Moon King. And he never finishes the story because every time he gets to the end, it's gotten too late and he has to go home, or else he'll be out past sundown, and he doesn't want that. But he's telling the story of how Hanzo needed to collect the sword Unbreakable, the breastplate Impenetrable, and the helmet Invulnerable. And with those 3 pieces, it would be all combined, and then he would be able to beat the Moon King. But he never finishes the story, and it's pretty obviously implied that that never actually happened, and the Moon King was the winner. So this is the status quo that the movie establishes, and the story kind of follows a hero's journey, where the status quo is interrupted when an old woman who Kubo talks to in the village tells him about this festival where basically all the people talk to the spirits of their dead relatives and loved ones, and he's like, oh, I can talk to my father. I'm not 100% familiar with what this holiday is or all the specific things. I just kind of picked up on what they're using it for in the story, and what they're using it for was basically he makes this lamp to try and talk to his father, and he sees all these other people, they're like,
oh, I'm talking to my grandma's spirit, look at me.
And then he's just over here and it's why won't my dad talk to me? And he gets all sad, and then he's so upset over it that he stays out past sundown, and his mother wakes up because during the day for whatever reason she's in a trance, and then once it's night she's oh, actually I just realized that's probably because her powers are connected to the moon, and when the moon's out she's more, it's kind of like the blood bending in Avatar. I didn't put that together. Crap, that's probably why. She wakes up and she's oh crap, it's sundown and Kubo's not here, and then like he's at the river, and then like his aunts come out like with some anime shit going on, like they're like, Kubo, we're gonna kill you. Actually, they weren't like, I'm gonna kill you, they're just like, I'm gonna take your eye. And then he runs away. They destroy the village, and then his mom comes out of nowhere like a badass, like, Kubo, I'm gonna save you, and like unlocks like some wings for him. He like starts flying off, and like he grabs like a strand of his mother's hair, which is like, ow. That must have hurt. And then she faces off with her sisters, and I'm not gonna go into that. So he wakes up and there's a monkey there, and the monkey was like his guardian because his mother gave him like a little wooden guardian, like a wooden cutout of a monkey. And it's like, this is your guardian. And now his mother's dead, and now the monkey has come to life to guard him, and they're like, all right, we gotta find the free pieces of armor. And they also come across a samurai beetle, and he helps them on their journey, but he was cursed by the Moon King, and he can't exactly remember everything. He's like, I think I was a soldier for Hanzo, so there's like a connection there between him and Kubo. So he has to go on this journey with a monkey named Monkey, and a beetle named Beetle.
If I'm Beetle, and you're Monkey, why isn't he called Boy?
And they basically go on this journey to find all the pieces of armor. They fight a skeleton, they go on the lake, there's eyes. Again, eyes, big theme of this movie. And they basically go through all that. There's a big point where they get to the last one, and all this stuff happens. All this stuff is revealed. Like, all this cool stuff happens throughout the movie. I'm trying not to spoil stuff, but like, they get to the last one, all this stuff is revealed. For example, and that the monkey is like, and then Hanzo's dad is actually. So long story short, Kubo goes back to the village to get the and he goes back alone for reasons that you don't need to know right now. And anyways, the Moon King turns into a giant snake monster, and they face off, and he has the free pieces of armor, so he should be able to beat him, but then he can't. So instead of fighting his grandfather, he has to resort to love. That's the thing about these stories, is the power of love trumps all. And he has to use his shamisen, and the thing is like, the thing that happened before when I was like, yeah, like all that, his shamisen, like 2 of his strings broke off, so he has to repair his shamisen, basically replace the strings with a strand of his mother's hair and the bow from Beetle. Don't worry about why he has that, but he replaces it with those 2 strings, and that's where the whole name comes from. And that's like a big moment where he's using like the power of love of like his mother and his friends, and the whole village comes together, and the spirits of all their loved ones, and then they, and it's all good. So Kubo and 2 Strings has been hailed as a masterpiece, and I can totally see why. I definitely think that if you haven't seen it and you love just stories in general, you should. The story feels like a very, like, it feels like an old-fashioned epic with characters and writing that appeals to a more modern audience. It kind of feels like the Odyssey, honestly, like with the way that like the stakes and everything play out. It's done very well, but I wouldn't say it's quite as amazing as other people would say, just because I did see some flaws in there, just some little things that I feel like, regardless, I would absolutely recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it, and that's all I gotta say. Thank you for watching Let's Talk with Tom on the Roundtable, but Tom isn't just on the Roundtable. I have my own self-titled personal channel, I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, I have a Snapchat, I have all that good stuff. In fact, I even have a Tumblr. So, if you're interested in any of that, check that out, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!